Champions of Peace, A History of the Nobel Peace Prize from 1901 to 2025. Alfred Nobel's will. His intention to reward those who during the preceding year have conferred the greatest benefit to humankind for the promotion of peace. Why the Peace Prize is special. Unlike other prizes, it often involves moral, political, and humanitarian dimensions, not just scientific or literary achievement. What counts as peace, not only absence of war, but efforts toward diplomacy, human rights, democracy, nuclear disarmament, social justice, reconciliation, etc. Year Laureate. Why they were awarded, 1901. Henry Dunant, Frederic Passy. Dunant founded the International Committee of the Red Cross and worked to help wounded soldiers in war. Passy was a leading French peace activist, promoting diplomacy and arbitration. 1902. Élie Ducomun, Charles Albert Goubal. For their leadership in peace movements, Ducomun directed the Berne Peace Bureau. Goubal worked with the Interparliamentary Union. 1903. William Randall Cremer. For his long-standing and devoted effort in favor of the ideas of peace and arbitration. 1904. Institute of International Law for advancing public international law and promoting peaceful relations between nations. 1905. Bertha von Suttner. For her writings and activism opposing war and promoting peace, especially her influential novel, Lay Down Your Arms. 1906. Theodore Roosevelt. For mediating the peace treaty between Russia and Japan, Treaty of Portsmouth, and more general diplomatic efforts. 1907. Ernesto Teodoro Moneda, Louis Renault. Both recognized for their work in peace movements, Moneda as a journalist and activist, Renault as an international jurist involved in peace conferences. 1908. Frederick Bayer. Claes Pontus Arnoldson. For long contributions through parliamentary work, oratory, and peace societies to promote reconciliation and arbitration. 1909. Auguste Bernert. Paul-Henri Destournel, de Constant recognized for diplomatic reconciliation and leadership in international arbitration and for heading peace-oriented conferences. 1910. Permanent International Peace Bureau. For organizing and promoting peace congresses and arbitration, acting as a clearinghouse of peace dialogue. 1911. Tobias Michael Karel Asser. Alfred Hermann Fried Asser for legal work in arbitration and international law. Fried for writings and activism for peace. 1912. Elihu Root. For his work in international arbitration and peace treaties, as U.S. Secretary of State and in legal diplomacy. 1913. Henri Lafontaine, a Belgian lawyer who worked for internationalism, arbitration, peace organizations. 1914 or 1916. No award. These years during World War I the prize was not awarded. 1917. International Committee of the Red Cross for its humanitarian work during war, helping the wounded, organizing relief, etc. 1918. No award. War years disrupted nominations, etc. 1919. Woodrow Wilson for his role in leading the U.S. during WWI and particularly for proposed peacemaking, League of Nations. 1920. Léon Bourgeois for his dedication to the League of Nations and efforts to achieve peace through diplomacy. 1921. Hjalmar Branting, Christian Luce Lang. Both were peace activists and writers. Lange in particular was a strong advocate of international cooperation. 1922. Fridtjof Nansen, for his work on behalf of displaced persons after WWI, humanitarian relief. 1923. No award, no suitable candidate or issues in evaluating during post-war years. 1924. No award, same reasons. 1925. Austen Chamberlain, Charles G. Dawes. Chamberlain, British, and Dawes, American, for their work in diplomacy, efforts to reduce tensions in Europe especially, Dawes also for financial stabilization after WWI. 1926, Aristide Briand, Gustave Stresemann, for political statesman efforts, Franco-German reconciliation, reconciliation in Europe, treaty work. 1927, Ferdinand Buisson, Ludwig Quidde. For peace activism, Quidde was outspoken critic of militarism in Germany. Buisson for educational and peace work. 1928, no award decision, not to award. 1929, Frank B. Kellogg for the Kellogg-Briand Pact, treaty renouncing war as national policy, and efforts to outlaw war. 1930, Nathan Soderblom for work promoting reconciliation between religions and peace among nations. 1931, Jane Addams, Nicholas Murray, Butler Adams for social reform, activism, peace movements, Butler for international arbitration and university, public policy contributions. 1932, no award. 1933, Norman Angell for his writings arguing that war is economically and socially foolish, peace education. 1934, Arthur Henderson for work in international diplomacy and as leader in attempts to reduce arms and promote peace. 1935, Karl von Ossietzky for his work in exposing Germany's secret rearmament, speaking out for peace despite personal risk. 1936, Carlos Saavedra Lamas, first Latin American recipient for mediation in border disputes in South America and promotion of peace in the region. 1937, Robert Cecil, Lord Cecil, longtime advocate of international arbitration, League of Nations, work to prevent war. 1938, no award. 1939, 1943. No award or awarded in wartime with limited effect, many years skipped due to WE2 disruptions. For example, 1940-42 not awarded. 1944, International Committee of the Red Cross for its humanitarian work during WE2, relief for wounded, prisoners, etc. 1945, Cordell Hull, U.S. Secretary of State, for his role in establishing the United Nations and promoting peace post-WEUs. 1946, Emily Green Balk, John Raleigh Mott Balk, for work with peace movements and international arbitration. Mott for work in YMCA and promoting peace and international understanding. 1947, Friends Service Council, American Friends Service Committee, both Quaker organizations, for their work in humanitarian relief and peace building. 1948, not awarded, attempting to reconstruct the world after WE2, no award. 1949, not awarded. 1950, Ralph Bunche for mediation in Palestine and achieving a peace agreement between Israel and neighboring Arab states. Outstanding work in diplomacy. Year laureate as summary, Jacques Reason, 1951. Léon Jouhaux for his leadership in the trade union movement and promoting workers' rights internationally. 1952, Albert Schweitzer for his philosophy of reverence for life and humanitarian work in Africa, medical missionary. 1953, George C. Marshall for the Marshall Plan, rebuilding Europe after WE2 and fostering peace. 1954, Office of the United Nations, High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, for aiding refugees in post-war Europe and beyond. 1955, no award prize money was allocated to the special fund. 1956, no award not awarded that year. 1957, Lester B. Pearson, for organizing a United Nations peacekeeping force during the Suez Crisis. 1958, Georges Pierre, for his efforts to help war refugees, especially in Europe. 1959, Philip Noel Baker, for long-standing work in disarmament, peace diplomacy. 1960, Albert Luthuli, for his role in the non-violent struggle against apartheid in South Africa. 1961, Dag Hammarskjöld posthumous, died in 1961, for contributions as UN Secretary-General and mediation in crises. 1962, International Committee of the Red Cross for humanitarian work, especially in conflict zones. 1963, Office of the United Nations, High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, for continuing work with refugees globally. 1964, Martin Luther King Jr., for his leadership in the U.S. civil rights movement using nonviolent methods. 1965, no award. The prize was not given this year. 1966, no award, no laureate. 1967, no award, not awarded. 1968, René Cassin, for his work in drafting and defending the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Wikipedia, 1969. No award, not awarded. 1970, Norman Borlaug, for work in developing high-yield crops and fighting hunger, contributing to peace via food security. 1971, Willy Brandt, for efforts to reconcile Germany with Eastern Europe, Ostpolitik. 1972, no award, not awarded. 1973, Lee Juk-tho and Henry Kissinger, awarded for ceasefire in Vietnam. Lee Juk-tho declined the prize. 1974, Sion McBride, Eisaku Sato McBride for human rights, disarmament, Sato for nuclear nonproliferation. 1975, Andrei Sakharov, for activism in human rights and opposition to suppression in the Soviet Union. 1976, Betty Williams, Mairead Corrigan, for peace work in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. 1977, Amnesty International for defending human rights work globally. 1978, Anwar Sadat, Menachem Begin for the Camp, David Accords and peace treaty efforts between Egypt and Israel. 1979, Mother Teresa, for humanitarian and charitable work among the poor in India. 1980, Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, for human rights activism in Latin America during dictatorships. Fossil Fuel Treaty Initiative, 1981, Office of the United Nations, High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, for continuing work with refugees. 1982, no award not given. 1983, Lech Wałęsa, for leading Poland's solidarity movement for workers' rights and democracy. 1984, Desmond Tutu, for nonviolent struggle against apartheid in South Africa. 1985, International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, for raising awareness about the dangers of nuclear weapons. 1986, Elie Wiesel, for being a messenger to mankind, speaking out for peace, genocide, remembrance. 1987, Oscar Arias Sanchez, for his role in negotiating peace in Central America. 1988, United Nations, Peacekeeping Forces, for their work to prevent conflict and maintain peace around the world. 1989, the 14th Dalai Lama, for advocating peaceful solutions, human rights, cultural freedom for Tibet. 1990, Mikhail Gorbachev, for taking steps toward ending the Cold War, Glasnost, Perestroika. 1991, Aung San Suu Kyi, for nonviolent struggle for democracy and human rights in Myanmar. 1992, Rigoberta Menchú Tum, for activism on behalf of indigenous rights and social justice in Guatemala. 1993, Nelson Mandela, F.W. de Klerk, for ending apartheid and transitioning South Africa to multiracial democracy. 1994, Yasser Arafat, Shimon Peres, Yitzhak Rabin, for efforts toward peace between Israelis and Palestinians, Oslo Accords. 1995, Joseph Rotblat, Pugwash Conferences on Science and World Affairs, for efforts toward nuclear disarmament and promoting responsible science. 1996, Carlos Felipe Jimenez Bello, José Ramos Horta, for striving for peace and self-determination in East Timor. 1997, Jody Williams, International Campaign to Ban Landmines, for leadership in campaign to ban landmines globally. 1998, John Hume, David Trimble, for efforts to bring peace to Northern Ireland, Good Friday Process. 1999, Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, for humanitarian medical aid in conflict zones worldwide. 2000, Kim Dae-jung, for efforts to reconcile with North Korea and for democracy and human rights in South Korea. 2001, Kofi Annan, United Nations, for promoting a better organized and more peaceful world. 2002, Jimmy Carter, for decades of work in diplomacy, conflict resolution, human rights. 2003, Shirin Ebadi, for democracy, human rights, especially women and children in Iran. 2004, Wangari Maathai, for sustainable development, democracy, peace in Kenya and Africa. 2005, Mohammed El-Baradei, International Atomic Energy Agency, for efforts to curb nuclear proliferation and promote safe nuclear energy. 2006, Mohammed Yunus, Grameen Bank, for microfinance and social business to alleviate poverty, which contributes to peace. 2007. Al Gore, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, for efforts to build and share knowledge about climate change as a threat to peace. 2008. Marty Ahtisaari, for peacemaking efforts in various global conflicts, Namibia, Indonesia, Kosovo, etc. 2009. Barack Obama, for his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation. 2010. Liu Xiaobo, for his long and nonviolent struggle for fundamental human rights in China. 2011. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Lema Gabawi, Tawakkol Karman, for nonviolent struggle for women's rights, democracy, participation in peace building. 2012. European Union, for 6 decades of fostering peace, democracy, reconciliation in Europe. 2013. Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, for efforts to eliminate chemical weapons globally. 2014. Kailash Satyarthi, Malala Yousafzai, for struggle against suppression of children and youth, and for their right to education. 2015. Tunisian National Dialogue Quartet, for their work in building democracy after the Arab Spring in Tunisia. 2016. Juan Manuel Santos, for negotiating an end to Colombia's 50-year civil war. 2017. International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, ICAN, for drawing attention to humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons and pushing treaty ban. 2018. Denis Mukwege, Nadia Murad, for their efforts to end use of sexual violence as a weapon of war. Wikipedia. 2019. Abiy Ahmed, for efforts toward peace and cooperation, especially resolving border conflict with Eritrea. 2020. World Food Program for combating hunger as a weapon and improving peace in conflict areas. 2021. Maria Ressa, Dmitry Muratov, for their efforts to safeguard freedom of expression, a cornerstone of democracy and peace. 2022. Ales Bialyatsky Memorial Center for Civil Liberties, for civil society work in Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, documenting abuses and defending rights. 2023. Nargis Mohammadi, for her fight against oppression of women in Iran and promoting human rights, freedom. 2024. Nihon Hidankyo, for the activism of atomic bomb survivors, Hibakusha, raising awareness of the horrors of nuclear weapons. 2025. María Corina Machado, recognized for her role in democratic advocacy against authoritarianism in Venezuela.